In Salem, from 1692 to 1693, it didn't take much to make people think someone was a witch. During the Salem witch trials, people were sometimes put to death just because of rumors going around the town. Sometimes all it took was a bad dream. During that strange year, people in and around Salem, Massachusetts, were sure that each other was making deals with the devil. In May 1693, more than 200 people were accused of being witches or wizards. 20 unfortunate people were put to death because of it. The 20 people who were killed in the Salem witch trials were from all walks of life. All of them were accused of being witches or wizards for different reasons. But who were they, and why did they get picked to be killed? We'll cover 8 of the famous Salem witches who died during the trials. Sarah Good, one of the first victims of the Salem witch trials. Sarah Good was one of the first women in Salem to be charged with witchcraft. People didn't like Good and her family, so they were basically homeless. And Good cursed a lot at people who didn't help her. So when young girls in town started having violent fits that no one could explain, Good was thought to be the cause. A doctor said that there was an evil hand on the girls, that Good and 2 other women, Sarah Osborne and Tituba, who was a slave, had cursed them, the girls said. Good and Osborne rejected the charges, but Tituba admitted. She said, "The devil came to me and bid me serve him." He also said that Osborne and Good were witches, and that they were just 2 of many witches who lived in or near the area. Not long after, panic spread through the town. As Good went to court, even her husband made hints that she might be a witch, or at least on her way to becoming one. "I with tears that she is enemy to all good," he said. A lot of people in Salem thought Good was a good choice to make a deal with the devil. She didn't fit in with her friends, she didn't go to church, and she couldn't say any songs. When a priest asked her to say she was a witch, Good yelled at him, "I'm not a witch. You're a liar. I'm no more a witch than you are a wizard. If you take my life away, God will give you blood to drink." Good was found guilty, even though Osborne died in jail, and Tituba was later freed and sold to another slave owner. The 5 of them were killed on July 19, 1692, in Salem. They were not the first ones to die, though. Bridget Bishop, the first woman hanged during the Salem witch trials. Even before the Salem witch trials, many suspected that Bridget Bishop was a witch. Her second husband, Thomas Oliver, had even claimed as much, saying, "She was a bad wife. She sat up all night with the devil." Oliver's death and the death of Bishop's first husband didn't help her cause. In 1679, Oliver's children even said she cursed him to death and killed him. Bishop had gotten away with minor witchcraft charges in the past, but in 1692, she wasn't so lucky. In April of that year, the afflicted girls in town said she was witchcrafting them. The girls started crying almost as soon as Bishop walked into court to defend herself. "How is it that your specter hurts those in this room?" demanded Magistrate John Hawthorne, referring to the evil spirit that witches could control. "I am innocent to a witch," Bishop responded. "I know not what a witch is." It seemed like every person said the opposite, though. Bishop had 10 of her neighbors testify against her. They said she did many bad things, like using puppets, voodoo dolls, and making things disappear. At Bishop's hearing, it was said that she could make a board fall off the Salem meeting house just by looking at it, and Bishop was said to have a witch's mark on her body. After being checked out, people in Salem quickly came to the conclusion that Bishop was guilty. She was taken to Gallows Hill on June 10th and hung there. The death sentence for her says, on June 10th, 1692, High Sheriff George Corwin took Bridget Bishop to the top of Gallows Hill and hanged her alone from the branches of a great oak tree. Now the honest men of Salem could sleep in peace, sure that the shape of Bridget would trouble them no more. People in Salem would find many more witches to kill, though, and sometimes they planned deaths that were much worse than hanging. Giles and Martha Corey, the couple killed within days of each other. Giles Corey was an outsider, like many of the people who were killed in the Salem witch trials. He did, however, die a very horrible death. He refused to say he was guilty of performing magic, so stones were used to press him to death. There was a bad image about Giles in Salem before he died. The 80-year-old farmer had been on trial for killing a farmhand many years before. He was even called a scandalous person in church records. Still, Giles felt the same way about the Salem witch trials as everyone else in town. He went to many of the early tests because he was scared and interested. Giles was so crazy about the idea of witches that he agreed that Martha, his wife, was probably a witch. It was true that he had seen his wife act strangely near a fire and that he had seen some animals get sick for no apparent reason. But then he was thought to be guilty. A lot of young women said that he had cursed them, and just like with Bishop, they started fighting almost as soon as he walked into the courtroom. All the afflicted were seized now with fits and troubled with pinches, Reverend Samuel Parris wrote. Then the court ordered his hands to be tied. The magistrate demanded, "What? Is it not enough to act witchcraft at other times? But must you do it now in the face of authority?" "I am a poor creature and cannot help it," Giles responded. But as he moved his head, the young women he'd bewitched echoed his movement. Giles finally stopped working with them, maybe because he knew it wasn't going to help him defend himself. He was given a sentence of peine forte et dure because he wouldn't talk. That is, he would be suffocated to death. That's what really happened in September 1692. Giles was taken bare and put on the ground with a board over his body. Stones were put on top of the board, one by one, while Corey yelled, "More weight!" and was crushed to death. He died over a few days on September 19th, 1692. His only goal was to keep the government from taking his land so that his two sons-in-law would have something to live on. But he was able to make sure that his living family members would be happy and successful, even though it cost him a terrible death. Martha Corey stayed away from this terrible end, but she was also put to death for being a witch. She and 7 other people were killed on September 22nd. George Burroughs, the minister among the Salem witches. Reverend George Burroughs said the Lord's Prayer as he was being put to death on August 19th, 1692, which shocked the crowd. It was thought that witches and wizards couldn't say prayers after all. Even with this last act, he was killed that day with 4 other people. Why did a priest get caught up in the Salem witch hunt? She had enemies in Salem, just like many of the other witches. He was the town's preacher from 1680 to 1683, but he quit badly because he owed a lot of money for his wife's funeral. A craze hit the town in 1692, and some afflicted girls said that Burroughs had cursed them. The preacher had moved to Maine by then, but 2 police officers arrested him and brought him back to Salem. The police were on their way back when a terrible storm made them believe that the devil had tried to free him. During his hearing, Burroughs said a few things that made people in Salem sure he was guilty. He said his house wasn't haunted, but he did say it had toads, which were thought to be famous witch pets. What else did the preacher say? He had only baptized his oldest child and couldn't remember the last time he had taken communion. To make things even worse, 30 people spoke out against Burroughs. They said he was hiding things, was super strong, and used a phantom. Several of the girls who accused Burroughs gave a signed statement that read a lot like this one. It was likely written by one of his enemies in town. "I believe in my heart that Mr. George Burroughs is a dreadful wizard and that he has often tormented me, and also the above-named parsons, by his acts of witchcraft." They found the minister guilty and told him to hang. Some people in the crowd did stop to listen when Burroughs said the Lord's Prayer as he was being put to death. But after he was done, Cotton Mather spoke to the crowd. Mather was also a preacher, but he didn't like Burroughs so much that he wouldn't even call him by his full name. Burroughs, Mather said, was no true minister. Mather insisted that the devil has often been transformed into an angel of the light. Soon after, Burroughs was put to death by hanging. Martha Carrier, the Defiant Queen of Hell. That's not where Martha Carrier lived. She lived in nearby Andover, but she was known for bad things. A lot of people thought she brought smallpox to town around 1690. Carrier and some of her children are smitten with that contagious disease, the smallpox. Town records stated, "Take care that they do not spread the distemper with wicked carelessness, which we are afraid they have already done." Of course, no one knows for sure why the girls in Salem accused Goody Carrier of witchcraft. It's possible that the fact that she was linked to smallpox turned a lot of people against her. Carrier was caught on May 28, 1692. A few days later, her trial began. The girls who had accused her were having violent fits when she walked into the courtroom. One girl said, goody carrier, she bites me, pinches me, and tells me she would cut my throat. Someone else said she saw 13 ghosts, which she thought were the 13 people who had died of smallpox. But Carrier was defiant. I have not done it, she said. Carrier added, it is a shameful thing that you should mind these folks that are out of their wits. But even though Carrier took a strong stand, public opinion had turned against her. In the end, Mather called her the Queen of Hell and a rampant hag. After being screamed at, her kids admitted that she was a witch. Another woman from Andover also said that Carrier had turned witch 6 years ago and even gone to witch meetings. In this way, Carrier's end was sealed. She was killed on August 19th, 1692, with Reverend George Burroughs and 3 other people. All of them said they were innocent, but no one heard their cries. Rebecca Nurse, the church-going grandmother. Most of the witches in Salem were not from Salem. However, Rebecca Nurse was liked by many people in Salem. Our arrest shocked many people. Nurse was one of many girls in town who said they thought she was a witch. But why? A family in town is said to have a grudge against Nurse, which may have led to the claim. Some people think the girls went after Nurse because she had told them off for fortune-telling. We cannot imagine the cause of the alleged complaint of witchcraft. Noted, an account of the life, character, and see of Reverend Samuel Parris, a tome on Salem's minister. She appears to have been an amiable and exemplary woman, and well-educated for the times in which she lived. Nurse was charged of being a witch, even though she had a great reputation in Salem. In 1692, that could get you killed. I can say before my eternal Father, I am innocent, and God will clear my innocence, Nurse insisted at her trial. Calling herself as innocent as a child unborn, Nurse declared, the Lord knows I have not hurt anyone. At first, it looked like Nurse's story and fame could save her life. People even signed a letter to back her up. However, the girls she'd bewitched had more fits after the court found her not guilty. Nurse was hanged soon. But her story is different from those of the other Salem witches. Nurse is a kind and gentle woman in Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible. She shows how crazy the Salem witch trials had gotten. Mary Easty, the woman who begged for common sense. When Mary Easty, sometimes called Easty, was found guilty of being a witch, she asked the court to do something. She did not ask for a stay of execution in the letter, which was a surprise. She instead begged the people in charge in Salem to think about what they were doing to innocent people. Easty wrote, I petition to your honors, not for my own life, for I know I must die. She pleaded that no more innocent blood be shed. In fact, Easty seemed to be more guilty by association than by actual crime. Some of her sisters, like Rebecca Nurse, were also accused of witchcraft. In 1670, their mother was also accused of witchcraft. Like Nurse, Easty was well liked in the Salem neighborhood. She was also called a witch by girls in town who had the same problem as Nurse. How far have you complied with Satan, whereby he takes this advantage against you? The Salem magistrate asked Easty during her trial. Sir, I never complied but prayed against him all my days, Easty insisted. I have no compliance with Satan in this. When Easty first spoke, the court seemed to change its mind, just like it did when Nurse spoke. But even though Easty was freed for a short time, the girls who had charged her started acting out again. So, Easty was sent back to jail and told she would be punished, just like her sister. But the girls weren't the only ones who thought Easty was a witch. A man in town also testified against her, saying that something unseen attacked him after he got into a fight with Easty 5 years ago. This looked like enough to the court. Easty was killed on September 22, 1692. Along with other people accused of witchcraft in Salem. But because of her death, a lot of people in the neighborhood were sad. Robert Califf, who wrote about the cases at the time, said, when she took her last farewell of her husband, children and friends, was, as is reported by them present, as serious, religious, distinct, and affectionate as could well be expressed, drawing tears from the eyes of almost all present. But not everyone cried when the killing was over. Califf says that one priest looked at the dead bodies with a sad face and said, what a sad thing it is to see 8 firebrands of hell hanging there. Mary Easty left behind a lot of things that live on after she died. The 2013 movie The Conjuring talks about her as a cousin of Bathsheba. The other victims of the Salem witch trials. 20 people had been put to death by the time the dust cleared in Salem in 1693. They were Sarah Good, Bridget Bishop, Giles Corey, Martha Corey, George Burroughs, Martha Carrier, Rebecca Nurse, and Mary Easty. 11 other people were also killed: Sarah Wilds, John Willard, Ann Pudeator, Margaret Scott, Wilmot Redd. Most of them were unpopular outsiders, and most of them said they were innocent. Still, the Salem witch trials found them guilty one by one. But why? What led to the Salem witch trials in the first place? A few different reasons have been given by historians. A common idea says that people in Salem were scared because of a string of terrible events, such as smallpox outbreaks and the Native American Wars. They were already scared, so mass panic was easy for them to fall for. Another idea is that the Salem witch trials happened because of a fight between two families, the Porters and the Putnams. The politics in the town got so nasty and heated that there was a real witch hunt. The strangest idea, though, came out in the 1970s and has to do with fungi. When eaten, the fungus ergot can make people have muscle spasms, false beliefs, and dreams. Salem was a good place for it to grow, and it's possible that it took advantage of the city's rye and wheat supplies. In the end, though, it's hard to say for sure what caused the Salem witch trials to begin. It doesn't help that the people who lost their lives and names have children and grandchildren. It has tried to make things right, though. Not long after the Salem witch trials, the town fasted and thought about what had happened as a way to make up for it. And by 1711, the settlement of Massachusetts had passed a law that cleared the accused's names. Even so, the state didn't officially say sorry until 1957. People today think of the Salem witches as victims of one of the strangest times in American history. They didn't have much of a chance because of the mass panic, angry neighbors, and proof like specters. Still, most of them insisted they were innocent until the very end. But the most disturbing thing about the Salem witch trials might be how they came to be. Someone said it could happen again, so why not? We hope you liked this video. Watch another video here.